He won at the Supreme Court. You'll want to know why Gerald Groff is still having to fight in court. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. Thank you for liking and sharing our videos and getting the word out to your friends and family. That's an important part of this project, and I just want to say how much I appreciate you for doing that. You really contribute a lot by getting others to see the conversations that we have here. Gerald Groff won a precedent-setting victory at the U.S. Supreme Court. It changed the legal test for how employers have to look at religious accommodations that are requested by employees. But there was still more to do, and that's what we're going to talk about today, because Gerald Groff is about to head to court again, and we're going to get all the details on that. First, we're going to talk to Stephanie Taub, who is senior counsel with us here at First Liberty. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Stuart.
And I also have with us on the line my longtime friend, Randy Wenger, who's chief counsel at the Independence Law Center up in Pennsylvania. Hi, Randy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad you could make it today. Randy, I want to start with you. When we watch legal dramas on TV, it always resolves by the end of the hour. You know, it takes 59 minutes and then they're done. It's over and it's victory and it's complete and final. But real life is not like that. Explain what this next step is for Gerald Groff.
Yeah, the Supreme Court changed everything. They changed the standard, and we got a unanimous win from the Supreme Court. But they sent the case back down to the trial court for the trial court to take a second look at it based on the standard. And in one way, you could look at it like, all right, we've told you how to decide the case, and now let's get this right.
Now, the U.S. Postal Service is on the other side of this one, and the first thing they did was try to get it thrown out of court at the district court level after Gerald Groff won at the Supreme Court. To me, a non-attorney, that seems really weird. Is that normal? Is that how these things work?
It's frequent. An employer will fight, and they'll continue to fight. But what's interesting about this case, even the day that the Supreme Court decision came down, they basically suggested that there was really no change and that they would continue to do business as they always have. So there certainly is some hubris that we've been seeing from the post office.
But there was a huge change. Describe that for us.
Yeah. The standard has been changed from you get to have your religious liberty in the workplace only if it causes zero problems for the employer. But everything is going to have some kind of effect, even a minimal kind of effect.
Right.
So there was a Supreme Court decision from 50 years ago that said anything more than a de minimis harm to the employer means the employer can say no to religious accommodations. And what that had meant for 50 years is what Congress said about protecting religious liberty no longer had any weight. So we got a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court that fixed that standard and said, you need to accommodate employees unless it's causing a substantial harm to the employer. So what it's going to for the trial court is to find out, is there a substantial harm?
So we went from de minimis, which is Latin for the minimum, the very least amount, to substantial, which is a term of art in legal. How would you describe that for the rest of us so we can understand the difference between the minimum and substantial?
I think at the end of the day, what the court wants to have is just a fair outcome. And they didn't think that doing the minimal was fair. They wanted something that's substantial, but they didn't put a dollar tag on that. They were talking about that during oral arguments at the Supreme Court, but there was no dollar amount, and it wouldn't make sense to put a dollar amount because it's going to be different for different employers. When you're dealing with the post office, that is a huge employer, lots of employees. In one way, it's a lot easier for them to pull off. In another, it's easier to absorb the issue of creating a rotation of other employees to work Sundays and not force those who can't do so because of religious conscience.
Randy, you're the one who brought this case initially. When you first talked to Gerald, what was it that caught your attention as an attorney about his story?
Sincerity. And he was stuck. At that point, he still had his job at the post office. It was before they had forced him out. And here was a sincere Christian who loved the Lord, who had a he had real convictions about his faith and took that job specifically so that he wouldn't have to work Sundays because it was before the days of Amazon.
Yeah.
And suddenly he found out that no, the deal has changed from the post office's side. And yet he was so sincere that he was willing to take the harm to himself. He could have very shortly, because of his seniority, he could have become another step up in the union system, would have never needed to work another Sunday in his life, but he couldn't violate his faith even for one or two Sundays. And then you have somebody he's not trying to get out of doing the hard thing. He was willing to work every Saturday, every holiday, other people's vacations, work more than one shift per day in order to be the best employee that you could possibly have at the post office. That worked out well for the post office, and they still didn't make it work. So what I love about him is his sincerity and his work ethic. You couldn't have a better client than Gerald.
Stephanie, I'm going to turn to you now. If you would please explain for us the larger impact of Gerald's win at the Supreme Court and how it's going to play into what happens now that it's being heard again at the district court level. How does that change the dynamics of what's happening there?
Absolutely. This case is an example. It's just a summary of what and when at the Supreme Court means on the ground for real people. So you have the same exact set of facts, and then Gerald Groff lost the first time around. And the Supreme Court went back, they clarified the standard, they clarified, no, it doesn't mean just a minimal burden, it means a substantial increased cost. And here, now, on the very same facts, the trial court said, okay, you have enough evidence, you go to trial. So this was a huge victory for Gerald because his case was over before, and now his case gets to keep going. He has that leverage, and other employees can point to this and say, no, my religious liberty rights have value and they need to be respected in the workplace.
So help us understand, you get a mental picture of what happens in court when this is heard. Who's up front? Who has to show up? What do they present? That kind of thing.
For the summary judgment, there were arguments on both sides about whether what this legal standard change actually means for applying the evidence. And we showed the court that no, we've got evidence that that they cannot show that this was a substantial cost. We've got evidence that this is a large employer. They easily could have accommodated him. And the trial court recognized that evidence and that there is enough here, and it should be up to a jury to decide. So because of Gerald's courageous stand, more people will get to have their day in court.
Gerald is a perfect example of how the cases that we bring here at First Liberty don't just impact the individual. Sometimes the court rules narrowly and it's just for the person that brought the case. But this is a case that won for everybody. Explain some real, if you would please, just give us some real life examples of what people can ask for in the workplace that before they would have been turned down or fired.
Absolutely. So you can ask for all sorts of religious accommodations. We often see them in a few different categories. So we often see it when it comes to Sabbath cases like Gerald, and that includes other cases where you need time off to attend a church service or to not only just to observe your holy day, if you need prayer breaks throughout the day, other things like that. Those are most likely going to be granted now. And then also when it comes to dress and garb, if you have to wear certain pieces of clothing because of your religious faith, those are most likely going to be granted now. And then there are other sorts of religious accommodations that you can ask for whenever the job duties conflict with an aspect of your religious beliefs or practices. Then it doesn't mean that there will always be granted. There are times when this standard will be met by the employer, but it does give you significantly more rights, and that your religious accommodation request should be taken seriously.
And what I'm hearing both of you say is if you work for somebody with 7 employees, it's going to be different than if you work for somebody with 1,000 employees, right?
That's absolutely right. But the Supreme Court's opinion, it did say that you have to take into account the nature, the size, and the operating costs of the employer. So that means it gives a pretty clear signal. If you have a large employer, a large corporation, a large government entity, it's a very different story than a mom and pop.
This next question is for both of you, and it's because part of my job, I get to go out and meet with our clients all over the country, and I'm regularly impressed by their patience, their diligence, their tenacity, because these cases take years to get through. I'd just like to hear from each of you to explain for us why that's such a vital part of a case like this. Stephanie, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so we just have to thank our clients. We can't thank our clients enough for, or it's an honor to represent them, I should say. They are taking a courageous stand. They have the patience and the dedication just to lean on God through this whole process. So, I mean, and you've met Gerald. You've seen anyone who meets him and talks with him for just a few minutes knows that his love for God just shines through. And so it's a pure honor to represent people like him.
And Randy, that's part of what I see when I'm on the road is these aren't activists. They aren't people who did something to try to get a lawsuit going. They're just people who were living their lives and suddenly trouble came knocking on their door. When you look at Gerald, Randy, and we'll personalize this to him, what characteristic traits do you see in him that have allowed him to be so successful with this case as he went forward?
Humility and a trust in God. I think for most people, when something like this happens, they either become really angry and obsessed with the case, or they like to just push it out somewhere else and never think about it again. But for someone like Gerald, he's able to give this to the Lord and trust the Lord for the outcome. And his main goal all along was to make sure that others weren't facing the same thing he was facing. So he just had an attitude that's so different from what I see so often in the world and so often in legal practice, as somebody who was here for the right reasons. And because God lifting him up, he was able to carry on through the years.
Yeah. How's he doing as he goes through this whole process?
It's still difficult. I think people need closure. And when you get a lawsuit that's going on, as long as lawsuits go on, it's hard to get a complete closure. But he's at peace, and he is thrilled that others have been able to be helped. Last time I looked, it was nearly 300 cases were citing to the Groff decision. So
wow.
No small decision.
Well, and that's a huge part of this, the impact it has on so many others. Randy, this case started with you. I mean, Gerald ran into problems at the post office. You guys connected. And then it was along the way that you asked First Liberty to come alongside and work on this case as well. Explain why it's better when we all work together toward a common goal.
Well, that doesn't sound like it should take explaining, but I think another one of the unique aspects when you're working with folks who really care about the ultimate outcome, and a kingdom outcome, which the folks at First Liberty do, there's a different approach where willing to work together with people who want to see the best result, not just having the exclusive, hey, this is mine aspect on something. And so I love working with First Liberty. The attorneys are phenomenal. The knowledge, the abilities, the strategy. I can't say enough good things about all of my experiences with First Liberty.
Now, you're a talented, skilled attorney with a terrific resume. What did First Liberty bring to this case that you needed? How did those work together, mesh together?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a little bit more of a story then. When we had originally lost at the trial court, I gave a call to my friend Hiram Sasser from First Liberty because I often call him up to say, what do you think? And this time it was, Hiram, did I mess this up? Am I looking at this case all wrong? And to have Hiram say, nope, you got this the right way. You did everything that you're supposed to be doing. And hey, I've got a strategy for you that I think just might get this case before the Supreme Court so that we can fix this for everyone, that's what First Liberty brings, a high level strategic effectiveness. And so I love being able to work together on things that really matter with others who care as deeply about these issues as I do.
Well, we are honored to work alongside you. And Hiram always says what he thinks. That's his part of his personality. He's never gonna blow smoke. Randy, I want to give you a chance before we go to share about the work of Independence Law Center there in Pennsylvania, what you do and the cases you're working on right now.
Yeah, we deal with a lot of public policy matters. We're connected to the Family Policy Council in Pennsylvania. And so our geographic boundary is pretty much just Pennsylvania. But everything from religious liberty work to various areas of public policy, from parental rights and abortion and other things. So, for instance, we've been doing a lot in schools, public schools, to fix the issues in school with library books and bathrooms and locker rooms and sports before President Trump came in to fix things. So he's been making our job easier there.
He sure has.
But in a blue state like Pennsylvania, it does take a religious liberty legal presence in the state to keep the state from going too far.
I do want to mention before I move back to Stephanie, Alan Reinach also partnered with us on this. Give us a sense of what he brought to this case as well.
He has been doing this kind of law for decades. He comes from a Seventh-day Adventist background and was dealing with religious accommodations for Saturday accommodations instead of Sunday accommodations. But he was the first phone call that we made even before we filed suit to say, how do you do this stuff? Because we know that you do these religious accommodation cases all the time. So he's been phenomenal. And then Cornerstone Law, locally here in Pennsylvania, like First Liberty, we end up working with a lot of really good allies that have private practice law firms and would like to do something really worthwhile at their private practice law firms because they went to law school thinking about the things that First Liberty does and the things that we do at the Independence Law Center. And we end up giving them an outlet to affect policy.
Very good. Stephanie, I'm going to let you have the final word. Anything else you'd like to share before I let you both go?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to Randy and for all of the work that you've done on this case and for assembling this wonderful group of attorneys to fight the good fight. And we're looking forward to the next step in Gerald's case. Hopefully we'll bring him that closure. We'll be praying for that wonderful outcome for Gerald.
Give us a sense of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's quite a team, including our friends from Baker Botts that argued the case at the Supreme Court.
Stephanie, give us a sense of the calendar coming up as far as when the district court hearing will be and then when we might expect an outcome on this.
Absolutely. So later this month, we're going to be before the district court and they will set the case for trial. So that'll be coming up very soon. We'll keep you posted.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It's good to see both of you. We encourage you to pray for Gerald Groff as he's at the heart of this whole thing, but also for Randy Wenger, Stephanie Taub, Alan Reinach, all of the attorneys who are working on this case. They need your support in this from a prayer standpoint. So if you would just commit that to prayer for the rest of the month as we're looking at this date coming up. And if you want to see America's religious heritage defended, you can make that happen through your support of First Liberty Institute and the Independence Law Center. You can look for the big red give button up on our homepage at firstlibertylive.com. First Liberty is fighting for what matters.